What is up, down, and sideways, you gorgeous individuals? It is another epi of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, fine folks, for a little bit of a breakdown epi going through the greatest series of all time. I think there's a lot of debate in terms of which ones you include. There's probably the same handful towards the top half of it, but we got 10 series to talk about, and that means we got no time to waste. So we're going right in, and we begin with what many people called the real finals of the 2018 World Championship, and that came in the quarterfinals, KT versus IG. Everyone remembers the base race, of course, to avoid getting swept out of KT, but we also had one of the best individual team fights out of Jackie Love on the Zaya in Game 5 of this set.
This is one of my favorite memories, getting to be there in person and arriving late to that match and getting there just at the moment that the infamous base race is going on and the crowd was going crazy. It was a hell of a series. Unfortunately for the home crowd in Korea, it is not KT coming on top, but this was absolutely at the time what we thought would be the finals of that World Championship, which I think is going to be a familiar thing with a couple of other notes or stops on this list as we go through them. But this series had it all. You had the thrilling of course, talking about that infamous base race where it was, literally down to the second of who was taking down the base. And then, of course, just the drama that comes out after this series of IG being the winner.
And, you had the Shy getting a little tilted, getting subbed out for Duke in this set. Jackie Love's a rookie, and I will die on the hill that KT was the second best team at this World Championship.
This is one that, again, revisiting it, looking back on everything else, and then, kind of taking that revisionist history and looking at the remainder of that World Championship, this was the one for KT. This is that missed opportunity that haunts you year after year when you really look back and really think, man, where's that World Championship in my trophy cabinet? And it's missing, and that's the year that you point to that it should have been yours.
Even though you got even closer in the T1 Game 5, you knew T1 was inevitable in 2025. Next up, it's another 2018 quarterfinal. I know, crazy, from the same tournament. And this one, primarily you're looking at the stakes of the Omega upset that G2 put against RNG. This was Golden Road era RNG, and I think the main memories specifically are the fifth game in this set that everybody talks about. That's the ward play around the Thresh Lantern. Uzi could not click a lantern the entire game, and the Legacy LeBlanc performance out of Perks.
Yeah, and this was, of course, the Hjarnan and a Wadid bottom lane for G2.
A Heimerdinger.
Strange timeline, but yes, raise your dongers for Heimerdinger down in the bottom lane was a major factor throughout this series. And yes, it is all leading up to that massive, critical Game 5, one where you didn't even think you were going to get to in the very first place when you saw this matchup lined up. This was, again, one of the very first instances that we were on Golden Road watch, keeping track of the progress, the success of this one team, and everything seemed like this was just going to be another stepping stone for RNG on their path to that World Championship until the creativity and just the never say die type of attitude from G2, where they weren't going to back down being the underdog on the day. You saw that in the bottom lane, and of course in that crucial Game 5, the solo lanes, the LeBlanc from Perks, and looking at Wonder in the top side, how he played throughout the entirety of the series was a big factor in being able to get across that finish line. This is a huge upset, one of these ones where unfortunately it doesn't end up really leading to anything at the end of it all for G2, but still one of the ones where I think you look at this series and you examine it in against all the other ones, this one delivers on the thrills.
Yeah, and I think now in hindsight, everyone's like, wow, the meta changed and kind of screwed RNG, but I go the other way and say this is a testament to being a World Championship team is adapting within a tournament. That's what we've seen SKT T1 do time and time again, is when the meta is a little different at Worlds, you adapt throughout the tournament and find out what's best and become the best at it. RNG unable to do it in that matchup against or G2, excuse me. A squad that was able to do it is 2022's Miracle Run, Dark Horse, Cinderella, DRX. There's a lot of 2022 that's going to be featured on here, but we start with the quarterfinals against EDG. Of course, this is the deft inhib game. The respawn, everybody calls this a 4-1 series win for DRX because they had that one. But the mental bounce back to go down 0-2 in the fashion that they did against that inhib and then to be saved by Zeka Silas was just one cherry on top for this DRX run.
This is a unicorn amongst the unicorn of matches that we are talking about, of the greatest of all time. This one specifically because of that comeback, because I don't think ever, under the circumstances and the situation that happens, you don't have that type of mixture in any other matchup that we have seen in the history of League of Legends. And to be able to come out on top from that situation really is the story for DRX. And again, it's just one of those ones where you can point at that the inhib moment with Def and everything else, and multiple other moments within this series as breaking points for any team, and reasonable breaking points on where you would falter, where this is the end of your year type of situation. But DRX said no, not today, not now, not ever in 2022. The world champs find a way. And as you mentioned, Zeka, the huge performances throughout this entirety of the world championships. But I think the ones most crucial, most clutch are partly coming in this series, and especially that Silas.
Yeah, and I think this was the beginning of your oh, this is something special going on with DRX. I mean, it had already built up to even get to this point, but you're like, no, this is anime levels of plot armor that we're seeing from this squad. And obviously that ended up fully coming to fruition. Another 2022 matchup that did not feature DRX, and I think the forgotten one because DRX steals all these headlines from this event, was the quarterfinals between GenG and D plus Kia. Then they were just Damwon. This was Nuggery's second time around with the squad, and this pick has the insane Swain game out of Showmaker. It has the insane Kane and Syndra in Game 5, and then the immaculate Lucian out of Ruler team fighting in Game 5. But this was before Fearless, and Damwon was pulling off all these crazy picks against GenG.
And it again gets lost in the shuffle throughout all the stories, all the amazing things that happened at that 2022 World Championship, that we forget that this was the early consensus pick of the matchup of the tournament that played out here in this one. And we thought we weren't going to get anything better. Little did we know what we had in store just waiting for us. But man, this series did have a whole bunch of aspects that are very legendary looking back. And as you mentioned, the Swain pick, the variation in the draft, and again, in an era before Fearless, so really taking it to that next level. And it's one of those ones where it's a painful look back for D plus Kia, because again, have you really gotten to that same level of power, same height since then? I don't really think so. And when you look at this as the result of, okay, well, that's the peak, and the peak is getting ousted here at this point in the tournament, it's not the best of feelings for D plus Kia fans.
I mean, it was pretty much the baton pass within the LCK. This was the Damwon that had been to 2 straight world finals, and this was the GenG that had just won their first LCK title for Chovy, and obviously went on to be the dominant de facto LCK squad for the next 3+ years. And yes, D plus maybe faded into obscurity, maybe started running out of money as an organization. Things changed very quickly for the former world champions. We move on to the 6th spot, and this is where we get a lot of T1/SKT sightings, absolutely shockingly. It's like they've been in a lot of high-stakes series or something over their history. But we're going to the 2024 World Finals, which still remains maybe one of the best back-to-back individual game performances out of the GOAT in Faker, with the Silas in Game 4 to save a game, and then, of course, the absolutely legendary Galio in Game 5 against Billy.
And this is such a special one for a lot of reasons, but really for me, again, the biggest one here is the storyline of Faker versus the LPL, and how he has been that gatekeeper, that denier of joy for that region for so many matches in history. This is just another iteration, but one of the greatest iterations to throw out there after all the battles that have been going on. You can look back on, I'm sure we'll talk about it. 2023, you can look at that run for T1 and how they went through the LPL and everything else. But having to answer in 2024 against the champion, the reigning crown of the LPL and BLG, the one that was destined to overthrow you. You've got Knight on the squad, the one that, again, other than Chovy, the only other name that can even be considered in a conversation as the next great one behind Faker, meeting the ultimate response from the greatest player of all time in the most crucial of game fives of all time. He dials up another masterclass.
Yeah, and it's the, zero hesitation, the one teleport play. Bin TP's a little further back. And again, it's split second. I still think this is the main difference between Faker and most other players is the zero hesitation on like the highest stakes moment to pull the trigger and be confident in doing that. I don't think anybody else has that level of confidence in these clutch moments.
No, and it's one of those ones where, again, this is something that you simply cannot teach someone. This is an inherent skill that someone has to be able to be that decisive, to see the play, evaluate everything else, communicate whatever needs to be done, but also be the guy that says, you know what, succeed or fail, I'm that guy. I'm doing it, and I'm making that play because, again, we know Faker. We know his history. There are down moments. There's shaker. There's bad plays, of course, and the wrong plays. But when you need to dial up the right play and someone needs to make it, he's that guy. And he showed it to the whole world once again in the World Championship.
And that was after he had already done it in 2023, as you alluded to. We're not in the finals, but it was the real finals of that World Championship versus JDG in the semifinals. And yes, this game, you didn't even need a game 5 like the BLG and pretty much every other matchup on this list. But really the storyline leading into this event, doing a lot of the heavy lifting. JDG, Golden Road, so close. Ruler versus Faker, the rematch to get to finals. And of course, we not only get one of the most insane plays of Owner's career with this Rel engage flashing over an Ash Arrow, but of course the iconic Azir insect play to catch Ruler out by Faker.
I think this is one of those ones where there's an interesting alternate history list where you look back on these ones and you find these world champions that come through and how that changes things out and the difference it would be. But that is a different timeline because we live in the one of the unkillable Demon King. And yes, in 2023, he was doing the same thing he did in 2024. And even more authoritative, I would say, here in this one. Yes, maybe different quality of opponent at the end of the day, but still a golden road to deny. And everybody on this T1 roster, I think when you look at that BLG one, you can maybe idolize Faker a little bit more. You could look at some of the key plays from Kyria coming across that were the big things. Zeus as well. You can look at all these type of things. But I think when you look at this 2023 and you look at this matchup against JDG, I think that is the one where you look at it as, okay, Faker's Master Splinter, and he's finally brought along the Ninja Turtles to rain havoc on New York and take the World Championship.
Yeah, obviously this was the first World's title for this iteration of T1 eventually because they smashed Weibo in those finals. But yeah, I mean, the peak level of team fighting, I mean, even after that Game 3 engage, which they're down in gold, by the way. You have Gumayushi doing the stopwatch on the Kalista to get the bailout, and then it ends up being an ace. So many incredible plays from T1, and they had to beat the absolute powerhouse that was JDG throughout the entirety of that 2023 season. In the 4 zone, it's yet another, we're going not T1, it's the SKT era, and I think the only non-Worlds one on this list. That's one of 2 non-Worlds ones. We're going to 2019 SKT versus G2, MSI semifinals. Everybody knows how many iconic plays came across this 5-game set. The Faker Silas Gnar engage, Caps gets a penta, the insane backdoor ending for Wonder on Gnar, followed by the top lane Pike that destroys SKT.
Oh yeah, and that was really kind of the specialty. Again, no Fearless, keeping that one in here for people to remember and where we are coming from, the history of the game, and how different things were, and to see that these were the champions, these were the picks, these were the difference makers within this series is part of the reason why this one gets ranked as high as it does. This was, again, We talked about this relatively recently going through the G2 and T1 SKT rivalry. This is another important iteration, one of these strikebacks for G2, pain type of moment for SKT, where they're looking again to climb back in this point, in this time, to climb back into that top tier, that ultimate level of international competition, only to have the door closed on them, and not closed on them by another LCK top team or an LPL top team, but closed on it by the LEC? No way. That one stung for T1 fans for quite a long time.
And this really was the setup of why there has been a rivalry. This was the domino that needed to fall for G2 to actually have a little bit of a clapback. But again, it wasn't SKT underperforming. This was just absolute insanity. And I think G2's chaotic 2019 playstyle played heavily into why we talk so fondly of this series in history. Keeping with the MSI theme, we go to the more recent one, and this is fresh off the press, BLG versus HLE. Maybe there's a little bit of recency bias, but most kills in an international final ever, and we had some of the most insane roller coaster back and forth team fighting and just games in general, especially Game 1, and of course the ludicrous Game 5 that just saw Gold Lead seesawing back and forth.
The other side of that coin, I think that it's not recency bias propping this up. I think that's holding it back because, again, knowing that it's so recent, it's so fresh, and I'm so, still kind of coming off that entertainment high, that's where I'm trying to pull it back a little bit. But every time I go back and look at it, and you mention how many kills are going on, the thrill of just how seesaw that Game 5 ended up being, yeah, I think this one does deserve its spot and will settle nicely into the top series of all time when we really do look back and think about this. Difficult, same thing kind of challenge that I think the G2 SKT one, where it's only just brought back a little bit because, well, MSI, it's not exactly the same as talking about being a world championship, what is at stake and all these type of things. But I think you can draw certain lines, certain parallels, and find the importance within this series that it elevates itself a little bit more than just your average MSI finals type of situation. And I think that's why I'm willing to put it in this type of territory.
And let's be honest, modern day MSI feels much higher stakes and more fleshed out than if you're going, 2017 MSI era where there's like 6 teams. It's fleshed out a lot more. There's a play-in stage, there's double elim, all this type of stuff. So it does feel more impactful now, the 2026 era with HLE coming away with that win. And obviously it's a revenge one from losing earlier in the tournament to BLG as well. So yes, the level of play, I think, alone deserves to be shouted out on this list. Next up, we go to the apex, the summit of that Cinderella run for DRX. And again, storyline does some heavy lifting because, of course, the Deft Faker high school Cinderella run, that connection legitimately feels like a feature film kind of script that we got for this whole tournament.
I think this is maybe why we got D plus Kia here, going on in this situation, because Disney must have seen this storyline and go, you guys are stealing from us. No way you find this type of line. It was crazy to have that Deft versus Faker storyline heading into it, on top of all the other storylines about DRX and how they had climbed this mountain to get to this point, and the doubts that you had about members of this team, about the entirety of the team getting to this point. And even then, on the other side, this was supposed to be the destined return of Faker and T1 to the championship, the pinnacle of this sport. And it wasn't. It was the ending times for T1 in that series. Of course, we see T1 rebound in the next couple of years, but it really is this amazing run by this squad that is able to come through and find the championship.
And the actual games, like how many of the games were decided by a crazy Baron fight? You had Deft have an incredible Varus play around Baron, and then you have the infamous Gumayushi Baron steal. Game 5 is ending in a failed backdoor. How many finals Game 5s are ending in a failed backdoor?
Not very many, and especially when you are looking at this one and you go into the details of it and you get the comms, you get the cool, calm, collected callouts from Beryl predicting that is the only card left to play. And of course, maybe more so than anyone else, knowing his opponent in Faker, but more so also Kyria as well, down looking in that little rivalry in the bottom lane.
It's mainly modern games throughout most of this list, but still sitting at the summit. We go way back, a decade plus, to 2016, the SKT versus Rocks Tigers semi-finals, and this is a testament to why the game could work when there wasn't Fearless Draft, because you drop in the Misfortune support pick and it shapes the entire series, turns it up on its head, and you had Smeb versus Faker, best in the world at the time, and then just the individual highlights throughout this series. The Prey Ash Arrow, Faker's Orianna escape, the Prey Peanut 2v4, Bengi subbing in on a Nidalee pick that he's never played professionally before. Had everything.
I think that there's a lot of people out there that are going to be able to identify within the modern game of League of Legends their favorite series, and they'll point to various reasons why. But I think in the back of your mind, like every car enthusiast or something else, you're looking at that vintage, that legacy that you are trying to hold on to, and that is this series, this SKT versus Rocks Tigers one. This was so good that I remember watching this with my brother at our house and seeing it and going, we got to go to finals. I don't care. We got to buy plane tickets, whatever, figure it all out. And we went to finals because this was so exciting, so cool to see. This series, again, you can go through it with the legacy that even already at that time was the pre-Dynasty T1 and SKT, and how dominant a force that they were, and again, how well-respected early Faker is in his career. And you look at Rocks Tigers, this scrappy squad that is coming on through, doesn't have the same sponsors and funding type of situation, but has that young talent to come through and is willing to play things that you haven't seen so far in this day and age. Misfortune down in the bottom lane, of course. These things were phenomenal to see, and really is one of the most iconic series of League of Legends history.
And I think even as the game gets more developed, people master it even more. I still feel like this one safely sits at the top, probably because it's dripping in nostalgia now, and that's why it will never get bumped off. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Gorgeous people. Thanks for hanging out as always, and we'll catch you on that flippity flip.